how does someone that just wants to share how they're feeling and doesn't really care about how they're perceived by being open, translate to them being any like gay or some form of feminine? Nothing wrong with that at all, but how does that translate to that? And so I had to, I kept having to check people about that. Like, hey, what, like, you could just ask me how I'm doing. You don't have to speculate with your friends and everybody else that I don't know or about like how I'm feeling. Like, these are people that have my number that can actually text me and say like, hey, are you okay? And I've only had maybe a couple of people like actually reach out and say, hey, are you dealing with coming out? Because I feel like that's a very like big part of why you're depressed. And at one time it was just like, why does my sexuality have to get questioned? Because I'm depressed, but I express it to the world. Like, this is not a cry for help because I'm secretly gay. This is a cry for help because I am sad.
Without black, there cannot be anything else.
Hello, gods and goddesses. Welcome back to another episode of the Black and Abundant podcast, where we are talking all things Black abundance and how we can elevate our people in every area of their lives. I am your host, Nia Love, and today we have another guest, a very special guest, a good friend of mine. And today we are going to be talking about Black men mental health. Now, there's a couple ways that I want to take this, but first, let me introduce you to my friend Jeremy.
Yes, hello.
Yes, Jeremy is a good friend of mine, and we've had many conversations when it comes to mental health, and also he is a big advocate for this on his social media platform, where he be getting all the ladies going viral on TikTok or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But but so today I want to talk about just a few things. So one, talk about just your battle with depression, what that looked like, and just kind of breaking down the barriers of what it means to be depressed and also how people may perceive you, because I feel like I kind of battled with that, and we've had a conversation about that as well, because I didn't fully understand it, but also I didn't know how to be the best friend to you in that phase of your life as well. So I want to talk about that, but also I want to talk about just the stigma around Black men expressing their emotions, and how that affects their relationships and their image, especially publicly on social media, and how society may view you. You cool with that?
Great.
Awesome. Cool. So where do we want to begin? I guess let's tackle the big guy first.
All right.
Let's talk about your battle with depression. So can you just give us a little bit of background, but also tell us what that season is like, where you are now, just anything that you want to sprinkle in there, and we'll build off of it.
All right. Well, I discovered what depression was my sophomore year of college. So this is like summer 2015, but I didn't know it was depression. I am, our community, we now talk about it, but back then there was no, oh yeah, you feel like this, you're probably depressed. You don't want to do this, you're probably depressed. And around that time, I am wanting to cry all the time with nothing happening during the day to make me want to cry. I lost interest in doing everything. I'm failing classes that I'm making A's. Would usually make A's in. Like, my whole college experience for that whole summer and fall, awful, because of, I just didn't know what was going on. And finally in 2016, I sat down and actually told somebody, an advisor, like, hey, I don't know what's going on. Because she called me in and was like, why aren't you active like you used to be? And something just told me I could share whatever was wrong with me. And she offered to, walk over to the health and wellness center with me and just figure out what was going on. And that was my first introduction to therapy. Very apprehensive toward it because, again, depression, any kind of mental health illness is a white person thing. If you ask a lot of older Black people, and at that time, it was just, I don't want to be perceived as crazy because I am getting my mental health checked. What is even a mental health check? And my first go around with therapy, he immediately diagnosed clinical depression. No question about it. And so I only had 2 therapy sessions with him at that time because he had to leave. And it was years before I got another one because I built that trust with you. You left. I don't want to do this again. That's a tiring process. So 2016, had my 2 therapy sessions, thought I was okay, tricked myself into thinking that everything was still going the same way, but I had to push through because I still wanted to graduate and figure out life. But trying to figure out life and adult, with depression on top, everything is more difficult. I spent a lot of my days hopeless in a sense, not understanding what hopelessness was, but I knew I was hopeless for whatever reason. Having all these emotions I couldn't explain, not being interested in things that I know in the past would have made me extremely happy. So having to navigate life in a pit, so to speak, trying to dig my way out and trying to find people I can trust was very hard. Being more vulnerable and seeing the genuine people that were there, allowing them to open up like you, at the time, allowing me to just be myself and actually check on me like, hey, I know something's wrong with you. I see how you actually are on social media, but when I get around you, that's so different. It's like, what's wrong? I know you hint at it on social media, but I really want to know. And having those people that actually, kind of bullied me into being vulnerable, helped me be more voluntarily vulnerable throughout the process of dealing with mental health. And so, pandemic happened. That made it 10 times worse. And I never thought like, oh my, I never thought I would want to, have any ideations of, making myself not exist. Thought that, again, that was just a white person thing. My depression can't get that bad.
Right.
Oh, it got that bad. I did not want to be here for a very long time. Every day I woke up, making jokes about how, like, if I wasn't here tomorrow or something happened, I'm okay with that. But, making everybody uncomfortable as possible just because, defense mechanism want to push people away. So if this gets worse, nobody gets hurt, or, I don't have to deal with the talks about this because I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it either. But it didn't work. The people that love me stayed. Y'all might be crazier than I was at the time, but love y'all the more for it. And finally found a therapist, Black woman, that was offering free therapy at the time, and she worked wonders. Like, it was like talking to another best friend, but it still was, I had to get up to that level because I didn't have the trust again. Because again, had one therapist, they didn't work out. Who's to say this one will? Having to spend more time explaining myself and where I came from, where I'm trying to go. But going to therapy and giving in to everything, not lying to my therapist, really helped me through that process, and helped me cope with it. And then we got to the question about medicine, because all the therapy in the world was not helping me truly alleviate what I was feeling and what I didn't want to feel.
Right.
And so that made me more comfortable with the idea of medicine, and started medicine. Was good for a while, but life got worse because my working situation and, comparison being my thief of joy, like most people, not being where I want to be, not understanding that I was where I needed to be at the time. Medicine would work at some point. Sometimes it wouldn't, because I was just stuck in this bubble of, I need to get somewhere where I'm going to be comfortable and actually happy about what I'm doing. But it just wasn't happening for me. Always getting told no, rejected, having to jump through hoops just to get to a next level of my career and my life, just for it to again be something that I'm almost miserable doing. And but again, I held those coping mechanisms and exercises that I did in therapy to get me through those moments, along with the medicine. And it all started to kind of work together again to put me in a good space, still dealing with my depression, but in a healthy manner, because it was really unhealthy at one point. And around 2022, I found myself finally getting the yes I've been wanting, because I was chasing IT for the longest, but it's hard to get into IT when, not to make everything a race thing, but
it's a race thing.
Yeah. Every hiring manager is white, and they give these promises of, oh, you don't have to be that experienced. We just need someone who's ready to work. And then you still come in with that experience as a black person working at a company that says we're going to hire from within, and they hire external candidates who have not even half the qualifications that you do to make sure that you can do the job. And to walk by those managers having the same conversations about how the people they hired are incompetent and they're upset at the production. It's just like, you had me and plenty of other people apply for these positions. We just all look alike, and the people you hire look nothing like us. And it's just like, again, that was very discouraging. But 2022, I finally got somewhere where there was somebody willing to take a chance on me. I guess I lucked out because my manager's black.
Oh,
and
there you go.
By the time the department executive got on the call for the interview, my would-be manager already vouched for me and said, hey, he's good. The interview's over. And I was in the door. And since day one of starting that job, I've been in such a great place. I went to the doctor and I was like, hey, he asked me about the medicine. Why haven't I refilled it? At one point it was because I didn't have insurance. You start a new job and it's like a 90-day period before you can get on any benefits. And I was contracted at the time. And so I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to have insurance by the time this contract is over. I don't know if I'm even going to get converted over as a full employee. So what's the point? So I didn't even worry about the medicine, but nothing was happening. I wasn't just curled up in the ball, not wanting to do anything. I wasn't sitting in the dark all day when on the days that I would be off work. I wasn't worried about, life. It was just regular days are regular days. A bad day was just a bad day. The next day I didn't spiral. And it was strange. And he was like, well, yeah, you're in remission. You don't even hear about depression growing up in a black household. You don't even think that it can be in remission.
What's that? What does that mean?
It, just like cancer, it goes away gradually.
Okay. Still
has the potential to come back, but you're in a period where it's just not there. And surprisingly to me, it does happen overnight. And I still can't explain it, but I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I am very appreciative to, actually say I'm joyful. Like, people ask me how you're doing. It's just like, it's not, I'm making it. It's not I genuinely say I'm joyful. Like,
that makes me so happy.
It's just like space. The smile that people see now is actually genuine. It's not a cry for help up under it. It's really like, no, I'm enjoying life.
Yeah.
And to have that full 180 and not to be not to be worried all the time and paranoid about my brain attacking me at some point. Very peaceful. Never thought I would see this kind of peace. And so now I am able to, advocate more for, Black men specifically being more vulnerable about how they're feeling and, not being afraid to explore those feelings, even if they don't understand where it's coming from. Because that's what I'm confident. That's what's got me here. Not being afraid to tell somebody, hey, I need help. For the longest, I did not want to say that, but I knew that, we're people. We're not meant to go through life alone. And the people I've run into that genuinely cared about my well-being, they weren't there for no reason. They offered the window, and I just jumped through it every time that I could and got more comfortable being vulnerable, got more comfortable sharing, got more resources because I shared, got more help because I shared. And now we're here able to have a testimony about what it looks like when you actually take care of your mental health. Remission might not happen for everybody, but you can still be in a comfortable place with your depression not taking over you and your life, and you can still be in control in a healthy manner rather than self-destructive. So, like Future said, life is great.
The Future quote, I have to applaud you on that one. So there are so many things that I want to unpack with all of that, including one thing that I'm going to say out loud now so I don't forget it later on, because I totally will, which is the pressures of being a Black man and how that affects your mental health. So we're going to table that one, stick it over to the side.
Got it.
Now, I feel like this conversation is about to go somewhere that I never intended it on going, but it's just hearing that inspired so much in me and so many questions and so many things that I want to unpack, because depression is something I don't like to talk about.
Yeah.
I used to talk about it, but there are just so many different perspectives and outlooks on depression, and everyone's depression looks different. That is something that I just don't like to discuss. And kind of like I said to you before, I feel like even though I was diagnosed with depression as a freshman in college, I felt like I was way more anxious than I was depressed. And I think that it was misinterpreted as depression in a lot of ways. But then again, depression has so many faces and so many forms. Maybe that was what depression looked like for me. But I have my own reservations and my own thoughts, and I kind of want to argue a little bit.
All right.
About this, because I have my own ideas of what depression looks like, but also if it's something that's uncontrollable or controllable. Because something that I heard you say was that your depression went into remission once your circumstances changed, or once your environment, once your situation changed. And same for me. It's almost like once I started to take a little different direction in my life, that's when things started to get better. Once I started to get rid of people that weren't supposed to be there, remove myself from situations that were only deepening my depressed state, was I able to free myself from, I guess, what was a depression for me.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, one, what does depression look like for you? But two, do you feel like it's something that is based off of circumstance?
So in everything that I say, it will be a first person based response.
Right.
Because I like to stay away from generalizations, because like you said, depression looks different for any and everybody. So for me, depression was, just going to paint a visual of how a typical day in depression went for me. Forcing myself to smile and enjoy things in social settings to appease the people around me, as to keep them from asking too many questions, so I could deal with it on my own, knowing on the inside I am yelling at the top of my lungs, get me out of here. Needing help, wanting help, not knowing how to ask for it. Looking at my life situation, thinking that I'm never going to get out of it, that this is the hole I've dug for myself. Very much self-doubt, self-blame for everything that I am going through, that I have been through. Wanting to isolate as much as possible. No matter how much I tell myself, hey, these thoughts aren't your own, knowing truly that they really aren't, but not being able to tell my brain chemistry that. Only having medicine at my side to keep those thoughts at bay, but somehow, some way, the thoughts were stronger. Trying to fight the urge to jump off my balcony, fighting the urge to, drink in my isolation to either put me to sleep or give me the courage to jump. Trying to fight these ideations of how else I could cease to exist, while not having to contribute more to my suffering. Thinking about calling out of work the next day and the next day, and actually doing that.
Yeah.
Not being who I know I am capable of being, and not having the energy to even try to be that person. Being exhausted by every little thing that takes little to no energy. Talking, texting, getting up to use the bathroom, fixing myself something to eat, going to get myself something to eat, starving on purpose because I'm in the bed. I'm on the couch. I don't have the energy to do any of these things. I don't want to do any of these things. I know I have to, but I'll wait. Yeah. Just not doing simple, typical human things because my brain is stronger than I am. And I can't, no matter what, I can't put my hands in my head and shift everything around or tell it to stop. And so for me, getting into a place where I was able to shift into a lifestyle that didn't contribute to my already piled on woes, and being able to put myself around the people and the environment that was more conducive to me having peace. I truly do believe my depression, although I never really thought about it, that it could be, is very conditional. Because it is genetic. It runs in my family. No one seems to know that, but dealing with the older people in my family and how they just refuse to accept it. Yeah, it's genetic. So I got it honest. But I think mine was onset with being pushed out into the world unprepared to make decisions that were my own. I was working off of everyone else's expectations. And so by the time I started to get into a place where my expectations for me had to be met, everything shifted. Right. Circumstances that were just kept building up into more negative spaces. Very little positive things could be perceived at the time. I'm pretty sure a lot of positive things happened, but at the time I couldn't see them. I only saw the negative. And so as I kept on going, depression kept getting worse, and nothing felt like it was in my control, no matter how much I wanted to say, hey, today is going to be a good day. Something made it an awful day. I'm going to go and do this. Something happened to where I spiraled didn't feel like doing anything else, went back home, did nothing.
Yeah.
And so now, being in the career field that I've always, well, not always, the career field I discovered I wanted to be in once I got to that place in undergrad, and, you know, only surrounding myself with good people, I can see like, yeah, like it kind of makes me feel like a fraud, because it's like, and I guess it's because of that narrow perception that I have about what depression actually is, because yeah, I put myself in the communities that I was able to talk about depression and learn more about it, but it never came up that, yeah, your depression can be circumstantial. So it's just like, I sometimes sit down and question myself, like, so was I just on a mental bender and didn't know it, and it was just, you know, a figment of my imagination? Was I putting that on myself? And it's just like, I have to like understand, like, no, brain chemistry is a thing, and that's nothing that you're just going to combat by yourself. And I can't be worried about losing my, what, lack of a better term, street cred with the community that I've like advocated for so long. It's like, sometimes I feel like I have no business telling somebody how to deal with their depression now.
Yeah.
Mine was circumstantial, clearly, but it's just like, I've learned to give myself the grace in this period to understand that although it might have been circumstantial, I still have my days that put me back into that depressed place, but now they are truly depressive moments, and it's not clinical. And so being able to work in this space where it's just like, okay, my depression specifically, circumstantial, but depression for me is very real, very overpowering. And as long as I can, I'm going to make sure I put myself in a place that allows other Black men and people in general to see like, hey, depression doesn't have to be your the end of your world, and you don't have to feel crazy if for whatever reason it just isn't there anymore, or it stays with you the entirety of your life. There's still a future for you that's comfortable and peaceful. There's just, for some people it's going to be circumstantial, and for others it's going to be a whole body of work to maintain their mental health with the proper help.
I have so much to say.
By all means.
I have so much to say. And the reason that I have so much to say is because this is so common. More than you know, this is so common. And I hear you say, okay, depression is circumstantial, but I'm finna make a generalization. Right. Y'all, don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. But every case of depression that I've ever seen is circumstantial. I was having a conversation with, she's a licensed psychologist, and she was saying depression is an emotion. It's not identified as clinical depression until it's your first emotion. And that like really sat with me because I mean, I have depressive moments as well. And yes, I had a whole period where depression was my first emotion that I felt. But that led me to believe, okay, if depression is an emotion and when we just feel it a majority of the time, does it really become clinical? Then what if we were actually taught how to regulate that emotion? Because how am I 25 years old and have been diagnosed with depression and have been this advocate just now hearing that depression is an emotion? I've never heard that before in my life. So to hear that okay, regular people on a regular basis can feel depressed at like one day and then just the next day be fine. Just how like anxiety is emotion. Everyone experiences anxiety. It's not until it's reoccurring often in your life is it an anxiety disorder. So I hear you, and I hear, you know, you say like it's circumstantial, but then I also hear like your battles with growing up, and how you said that it's genetic. And I feel like when it comes to mental health, it is genetic, but not necessarily chemically genetic. Like my family, in my case, I suppose, like my dad, he dealt heavily with anxiety, and like his mom dealt with anxiety, and so on and so forth. And it's not necessarily that an anxiety chemical was passed down to me. It's that anxiety being their first emotion was passed down to me, because if that's the way that they react, I'm simply going to learn from them.
Right.
So as a child, I was never taught how to regulate my emotions of anxiety and depression. And that's how it ended up in my life, showing up frequently and eventually being clinically diagnosed as such. But I recognized along that journey that once I learned how to regulate those emotions, and once I changed my circumstance, I feel like a lot as Black people, a lot of the time we settle in a life and a mentality and an idea that we've been taught that is meant to keep us, you know, suppressed, depressed, all of those things.
Yeah.
And because of that, we look up at our lives one day and we recognize that we're not doing what we want to do. We're not who we want to be. And it seems like life keeps holding us back and people keep pushing us down. And I could see how it becomes a place where those emotions become more frequent. And because we were never learned how to control them, and we were also never taught how to talk about them, or never really encouraged to talk about them, I could see how they could become mental illness. Now, all of that being said, how do you feel about that? Me saying that?
Hold up. Now, I know you ain't listening to this podcast and your credit is jacked up. Nah. The goal here is being Black and abundant, not Black and limited, because we both know that there's only so much you can do with a jacked up credit score, right? I know you're tired of getting denied. So what I need you to do is head over to start.jscocapital.com and book a free credit consultation with us right now. And let us come up with a game plan to get your credit right. I do not care what's on your credit. It can be collections, bankruptcies, charge-offs, late payments, you name it. We'll get you right. So once again, that's start.jscocapital.com. All right. I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. Now let's get back to the episode.
I mean, it's all very, very valid. But being someone who, emotions are easily manipulated. When you can, like, okay, I'll take me now. Today, I can tell myself it's going to be a good day. And I can make it a good day regardless of what happens. But back when I tried to do that and still had to, take medicinal help to kind of aid in that process, it's like, it's hard for me to, subscribe to the idea that my depression was an emotion, because now I can control them. I couldn't control it back then when I tried my hardest, with or without medicine, to sit in a space wanting to cry and then crying uncontrollably. That's not something that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, now I can say, I don't want to be mad. I'm not going to be mad. I don't want to be sad. I'm not going to be sad. Like, I'm in a space where that is controllable, because I am not dealing with depression constantly. Back then, it was a 24/7 thing, that was uncontrollable for me. Although I didn't want to be that way, for whatever reason, I stayed that way despite my best efforts. So I understand the point of, depression being an emotion. But if that is the case, depression got the best hands around the block. And you are going to have to be a Floyd Mayweather type to fight back.
Right.
And I just can't I personally can't look at it just as a, base emotion, just because for me that diminishes the genuine experience of it just being out of my control.
Right. And I want to rephrase that, because by control, and I feel like this is also a conversation that is debated about, in the Black community, but all around, of what it means to control your emotions. So for me and where I am now, controlling my emotions does not mean stopping them. Controlling my emotions is my ability to address them and see them for what they are. And so when I say depression being an emotion, I don't necessarily mean you can stop it by any means, because I understand. Like, I have anxiety attacks. I go through that. I can't stop it. Right. When you're deep in it, and it's hard. Like you said, it got hands. It definitely got hands. And of course, over time, it gets easier to fight it back. But at the same time, that instant where I feel anxiety, I can't stop it. All I can do is recognize it for what it is and try from there not to let it overtake me. But it's not always the case, especially when you're deep in it, and especially when you're just now learning how to acknowledge it and see it. So I was not trying to, what's the word? I don't want to diminish your experience, and same with mine, or anyone else's experience with your emotions, because at the end of the day, your emotions can't be stopped. Yeah. You're a human being. And so that's where I want to transition into being a man and this idea that you have to stop the way that you feel in order to be considered a man. So I want to ask you about, because you've been so open about your emotions, and you have been since I've met you. So I just want to know your experience and the feedback that you've gotten, but also if you ever struggled with identity as a man or with masculinity because of your relationship with actually allowing yourself to feel your emotions. So talk a little bit about your experience with that.
So, growing up, I had maybe 3 male figures in my life, and none of them were my dad. Yeah. He was there, but he was not there. He was the embodiment of say nothing, do nothing. But if I do say or do something, it's going to be a hyper masculine response. It's not going to have any tact, anything productive behind it. It was very self-destructive and destructive to those he responded to. But the main male figures I had, they weren't the most vulnerable or expressive, but they did show me that it's okay for me to have my emotions.
That's good.
Being raised mostly with a woman's presence, my mom and others made sure, I was able to, if there was a time that I felt something or whatnot, it was okay. But I didn't understand that until I got older, because back then I just kept everything to myself, because seeing your seeing the adults in your life go through certain things, you just like, I'm not going to bother you with this. So early on, I had already kind of put myself in a shell to where sharing just wouldn't do anything but stress anybody out. So not for the lack of, my adult figures showing me that it's okay to, have emotions. It was just the circumstances they allowed me to see didn't allow me to share like I should have and could have. And so growing up and going on through school, like it was hard to find those people where if I said how I felt, it was taken and cared for, not disregarded. It took a while to get to the people that didn't disregard my feelings. And so, I never felt comfortable sharing, a lot of how I was feeling. I would always use, fun and games, comedy, and, anything I could to, if I did share something, I made it lighthearted. I didn't have it in me to be too serious about what I had going on. And so I would just make jokes about it so people would laugh it off and we can go on to the next topic. So I wouldn't be the, topic of discussion. And running into people that wouldn't let me do that allow me to be more vulnerable, allow me to be more open, because I got to a point where my self-awareness just, I don't know, it just went through the roof, because I started to see a lot of the guys around me being very, self-sabotaging themselves, being very self-destructive and doing things that just didn't make sense because they just weren't sharing. Like the stuff they would share with me, the little that they would, it's just like, we should dive more into that. Yeah. But they didn't want to because for whatever reason, we're not supposed to do that. Share a little bit, but not enough to let anybody know that you actually got problems. And I knew I didn't want to be like that. So I set out to be the example that I'd always wanted to see, as a kid and as a developing adult. So I just became an open book because I don't know, I got frustrated seeing the people around me be embarrassed by their own emotions and their own experiences. And growing up with that idea that you have to be a certain way and you have to present yourself a certain way in front of people, especially certain people, if you want to be perceived positively, just irked my soul. The way you see me operate today is because I truly never want anyone else's perception to hinder me from being who I want to be on a daily basis. And that kind of teaching hindered me a lot growing up. I could have done a lot more and advocated for myself a lot more had I seen the adults around me do that for themselves, but they were too preoccupied with making sure they were perceived a certain way that they just let a lot slide under the rug. And I just got to a point where I couldn't keep doing that. And I wanted to make sure the people around me knew that if they couldn't do it with anybody else, they could do it with me, no matter how embarrassing or how awful they thought whatever they felt or was doing was. Man or woman, but especially men. Women would talk to me all the time. Right. But my guy friends, it was like pulling teeth to get them to show some caring emotion toward me on the stuff that, actually mattered. And I finally found the guys that, are comfortable with me saying, "Hey bro, give me a hug," or, "Hey bro, how you feeling today?" And they actually tell me, and we discuss these things, having productive conversations about feelings and everything. But being that open and being that person to any and everybody that came into my space for whatever reason came with, allegations of, being sassy or being down low or just being straight up gay. And
Right.
my depression stemming from me being gay and just not wanting to come out. And that's very discouraging for a lot of men, because how does someone that just wants to share how they're feeling and doesn't really care about how they're perceived by being open, translate to them being gay or some form of feminine? Nothing wrong with that at all, but how does that translate to that? And so I had to, I kept having to check people about that. Like, hey, you could just ask me how I'm doing. You don't have to speculate with your friends and everybody else that I don't know or about like how I'm feeling. Like, these are people that have my number that can actually text me and say like, hey, are you okay? And I've only had maybe a couple of people like actually reach out and say, hey, are you dealing with coming out? Because I feel like that's a very big part of why you're depressed. And at one time it was just like, why does my sexuality have to get questioned? Because I'm depressed, but I express it to the world. Like, this is not a cry for help because I'm secretly gay. This is a cry for help because I am sad. Like, I'm truly just sad about life.
That's sad.
And so, cause it's like, for me, I was more upset. Like, bro, there are people that actually, that actually can't function properly in life because they are scared to come out.
Yeah. And
it's just like, I don't know. I didn't like how that correlated to, homosexuality and femininity. Like, there are people that actually go through this. Mm-hmm. And now you just grouping everybody together. We can't take care of those people because you got everybody lumped in with them. It's hard for them to get through the crowd and actually express like, hey, I'm going through this, because you're already making it hard for the guys that aren't going through that just to be themselves and just be sad in peace. And it's like, I'm having to really sit over here and not defend myself, but to the people that knew me and, allowed other people to, say these things without like checking it or just coming to me about it. It was just like, bro, all I'm doing is trying to create an environment where I don't have to be anybody else but myself. Mm-hmm. Why is that making people challenge my manhood and whatnot? Like, I just don't care about these outside perceptions. I just want to be okay. And I want the people around me and the people that will come in contact with me or my content to know that I, for one, am not going to sugarcoat how I feel, and they shouldn't either. Yeah. I want people to see me and be inspired by the fact that despite all of these speculations that happen and all these expectations for Black men to be a certain type of man, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. As long as you aren't hurting anybody, being yourself, no matter gay, straight, bi, trans, whatever the case may be, you're just a person at the end of the day. Don't let those outside perceptions get the best of you and make you shudder back into yourself because you don't want to deal with how people are perceiving you. You got to be vulnerable if you're going to find some sort of peace within, whether it's depression or any kind of mental health issue you might have. And so it was hard for a while to, continue to put out this genuine energy by being vulnerable and trusting that who I'm sharing all this with isn't going back and, convoluting with other people trying to figure out if I'm telling the truth or not about being straight and
Right.
just being sad about that and not just life. So yeah, for a while, it didn't stop me from doing it, but it stopped me from doing it the way that I was, because I didn't want to deal with having to check people all the time about, hey, I'm just sharing my life because I'm truly sad. I need to know I'm not alone, and whatever other people are sad about, whether it's they don't want to come out or life is just awful, I want to be able to sit in that space with all of them and not feel like we're being questioned when we come out, when we actually discuss the truth about why we're sad.
Yeah. And it's really sad that the world is set up like that today. I don't know if you watch Love is Blind or
I get my clips, but yeah.
So you know the whole like Jackie and Marshall situation and how they're just like hounding both of them, honestly. But I saw this clip on Instagram today of when Jackie and Marshall saw each other for the first time, and like she touched his butt or something, and he like posed for her, and it was like acting silly, like cutting up, and people in the comments just being like, well, she should have knew he was sweet then, and all of this. And I just feel like there's just this whole, even, I mean, not to talk about Love is Blind, but it's just a great example of like throughout their entire relationship, she kept questioning his sexuality because of his emotional vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely ridiculous. And I wanted to talk about just like women and dating and the role that a man is supposed to play in the relationship when it comes to emotional availability. Because I feel like a lot of women, they're like, oh, well, I want him to be emotionally available. But then they get a man who is not afraid to talk about his emotions. And then all of a sudden she's like, he's just too soft for me. He need a man up or whatever Jackie said. But I see this quite often. So I just wanted to know like your thoughts on that.
I've been, lucky enough to deal with women that like me for me, and was in the know enough to avoid the women that didn't. Because it would always get back to me about like, how certain women found me attractive, but they questioned like my manhood and my sexuality. Just because, I made it known, like I accept any and everybody that's not bringing me negativity and not putting it out. I don't care where you come from, what you do, how you do it. If you're going to be in my space, I just let it be known. Just come in with some positivity and be open. That's it. And of course, you see my content. I'm as silly as ever. I don't really care about the what's feminine and what's not. Like if it's silly and it makes me laugh / smile, I'm gonna do it. This is what it is. And dating wasn't much of an issue, but finding out that my dating pool, a lot of them questioned, like they thought my manhood was questionable because of the openness that I had, the vulnerability and the disregard for social expectations. It made them uncomfortable, I guess. I don't know. And you see it, and you just see it a lot on social media. Black men can't really do much. And it's just like, it's like they can't do anything, or it's sassy. Like it doesn't matter. A lot of what black men do just to exist and have fun, they just qualified as sassy. And it's just like you said, a lot of women want their man to be emotionally intelligent enough to, talk with them through things, but also be man enough to give them that sense of protection. And in my dating experience, no woman has ever said, she has ever said or shown that she feels unsafe with me.
Right.
So it's just like I'm vulnerable enough to make my partner comfortable, and break those walls down to make her feel soft, but also strong enough in mental, emotional, and physical doesn't really matter. But for me, I have the physical component of
Right.
being strong for her to feel safe in all aspects. But a lot of people and women in general just couldn't see that because they wouldn't look past the fact that I'm just someone that they perceive as feminine and they don't want another girlfriend. And that has been told to me before. And
That's
it's like,
ridiculous.
I'm like, hey, you have your preference. I can't, I'm not going to sit here and make you believe that I'm man enough to be the one for you, the one that's going to protect you. I can't do that for you. So I was just lucky enough to get to the women that found me attractive just for me and felt safe in my presence, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
That's beautiful. And to you and to all of the men out there that might be listening to this, I feel like society has got it all wrong when it comes to strength and its correlation to emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened in the Black community for us to believe that emotions equate to weakness.
Mm-hmm.
When in actuality, our emotions are literally what makes us human.
Right.
Like, I don't understand, how or where we got that from, because to even believe for a second that as a man, as a woman, as a human being, you're not supposed to feel or to be vulnerable with other human beings is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
It bothers me that that's a thing, because I mean, even as a Black woman, I ran into the same problem of, because I feel and because I'm vulnerable, I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been denied some things, and I'm not going to say it out loud, but I've been denied some things in my life because they thought that I was crazy.
Right.
Which is why is this a thing, and where does that come from? And there could be so many reasons as to why that is a mentality in our society, in our community. But I say this to say, any collective thought that holds us back from our true power as a community is probably a white person's problem. They probably put that in place to keep us suppressed in a lot of ways.
With you when you're right. You're right. Because I personally, I hate being in those conversations with my guy friends where pause and no homo is used as a buffer. Like, hey man, if we all know what we do and don't like, and we know we don't like each other, why does what you say have to come with a precursor to not being homosexual?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it has a lot to do with this sense of pride that has been instilled in Black men to, I guess, honestly protect you in a way. And I said this earlier, but I want to take a dive back into it about the pressures that are put on Black men in this world and how it correlates to the way that you guys feel about mental health, but also the things that you guys go through mentally and emotionally because of it. Because I feel like as a Black man, as a man, you want to, like you said, protect and provide. But as a Black man in this world, it's so much harder than it may be for other races to do so.
Yes.
So take that, run with that.
So again, speaking from Jeremy's point of view, every day I am reminded that I'm a Black man. I am reminded that I'm going to have to work very hard, harder than necessary, to make sure I get to the level of life that I could only dream of. It's like with everything happening in the world, I'm more worried about, am I going to make it to see the fruits of my labor? And to do that, I have to stay strong. I have to make sure I get it so the people up under me can get it. The family I plan to have, I got to make sure they know their dad and their husband is strong. He, like, the world may come at him at every turn, but he still got it. And in reality, no, I do not. I'm worried every day that what I'm doing now is not going to matter because I'm Black. Like I said, every day I'm reminded I'm Black and I'm part of the other. Try to see the good in the world, but the world keeps showing me that I have to be stronger than everybody else if I'm going to be the protector of my people, especially my Black women, and myself, of course. And it's just like, and sometimes when I share these thoughts, they're brushed off as me overthinking, and I need to stop that. I'm not given the space to actually talk it out. Even to this day, like, I'll say this and it's just like, bro, you just overthinking, you gonna get there. Stop worrying about it. It's like no one wants to have that discourse with me, to actually, like, give me that space to feel comfortable to, keep going the next day and not have the same recurring thoughts. But I'm expected to be the listening ear and the voice of reason when other people come to me with that kind of thing. It might not be the same issue, but I'm expected to, be that shoulder and that ear, unconditionally, while people can just hear me and my concerns and brush them off. Now, it's not everybody, but it happens more often than not that when I bring up how I'm feeling as a Black man, or just in general, somebody's attitude is changing because I done brought them down with my negative thoughts. And so I feel like if it's happening to me, and of course it got to be happening to other Black men, they're not given that space to, share and be taken care of in that space for the time that they're there, to be comforted. It's like, I don't know. Like I said, it's not everybody, and it's not every time, but I know a lot of the times there's no space for a Black man to have his emotions and be comforted at the same time. You either got to be comforted some other way, or you just got to have your emotions and deal with the nonchalant response or a disregarding response.
Right. And I want to talk to my Black women for a second regarding this, because you see there are men out here that are actually trying to become emotionally strong. And the way that you do that is through vulnerability. The way that you do that is the ability to trust and be honest with yourself and others about what's really going on internally. However, if we shoot them down every time they try to do that, it's very counterproductive to the betterment of our people. I feel like there's a big war going on between Black men and women that's really annoying, because that's what they want to happen. This was put in place during the civil rights movement when we were, as a Black family, stronger than ever. They separated us for a reason. in order to tear us down and to keep us suppressed as a community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's continuing to go on for this long, and that is frustrating.
Yeah.
The fact that us as Black women, we constantly put the Black man down as weak or as he's not fulfilling his role. We're expecting him to be our safety and our security and to take care of us. But what are we doing to actually take care of the Black man? And again, I'm not making this a gender war. This is, we talk about Black men all the time and how Black men can be better and do this more and how Black men not doing this. Like, we talk about that enough, but do we really talk about how Black women aren't doing their part and making sure that our Black men feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you can see, as you can hear, our Black men go out here every day and they're constantly reminded of how hard it's going to be for them to protect and provide for their family. And why would they want to come home and hear the same stuff over again, making it even harder for them to protect and provide for their family? I feel like one thing that I did really well in my relationship with Jamal is that from the jump, from the day that we met, I gave him a safe space to talk about anything. And I mean anything. Even when it would make me mad what we talked about, I would still give him the space to talk about anything and not judge him for that. And because of that, he's been able to become even stronger as a man and feel at home with me. He knows that every time he comes home, he's going to be safe with me and I'm not going to tear him down. And he has the energy to go out here and fight the world as a Black man. That's just a whole rant that I just needed to go on because that's it's frustrating. It's really frustrating to hear you talk about it, to hear it from a Black man's perspective, especially being as emotionally available and vulnerable as you are and as emotionally strong as you are. To hear it from your perspective, it's just, it's refreshing, but also frustrating to hear that you deal with, you know, people not accepting that and not being open to that.
Yeah. It's great to get it out.
Yeah.
Again, I have to keep this to myself a lot because for whatever reason, my mood about a lot of this stuff dictates everybody else's mood. Not sure why, but to protect my peace and theirs, I just try to muddle through it as best as possible.
Yep. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair at all. On an ending note, we got to do better. Emotionally, we have to become more mature as a people to not only be receptive of our own emotions, which we do terrible at, but also being receptive of other people's emotions, which we do terrible at because we're not receptive of our own. So I think overall, we just need a massive mindset shift in our community. So that being said, any closing thoughts, anything that you would like to say to our Black men and women that are out there?
Black men specifically, it's okay to be vulnerable. Your emotions don't make you weak. You are just as strong as you feel, even when you don't. Don't feel embarrassed because you're sad one day, mad the next, happy in the next minute. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to embrace your fellow Black man, especially, but also your fellow Black woman in those times of emotional need. If you feel it on your heart to, be a shoulder for someone, even when they haven't said anything about it, do it. Let your intuition carry you in that journey of being vulnerable, being open, and being emotionally intelligent enough to understand that that's the strongest thing that you can do, is be vulnerable. Only the weak-minded find it an issue to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid of outside perceptions. As far as Black women go, I don't care what hairstyle, what tone of skin, where you come from. All of y'all are gorgeous. All of you are beautiful. We come from you. And I respect all of you with all my heart. If you are part of that demographic that, finds men that are vulnerable to be feminine, or, you just find those men that express themselves in a way that you don't find to be in your preference, I want to ask you to be more open to allowing them to be themselves and finding the positivity, happiness, and joy in a Black man just being able to share who he is unapologetically. And I just hope that there's a future where we all kind of come together and just say, hey, no matter how someone expresses themselves, as long as it's in a positive, non-harmful manner, it doesn't matter. That's still my dog at the end of the day. Even if I don't know him, we're all in this together. And I am specifically speaking to my Black people that enjoy being Black and don't subscribe to the proximity to whiteness. If you are on the proximity to whiteness side, I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry. I'm only talking to the ones that see me and recognize that we are in the same boat, and we are here to support each other. And yeah.
I love it. The proximity to whiteness. I don't know why they'd be watching this podcast to begin with, but hey, if you're out there, come to the dark side.
Yeah.
But okay. Final question before we let you go. Jeremy.
Yes.
What does it mean to be Black and abundant to you?
Being Black and abundant to me means knowing that who you are as a Black person is more powerful than you'll ever know. It means knowing that your presence on this earth makes certain people very upset and very scared because they know the power that you have, just behind the history of your skin. Being abundant means, going forth and being prolific and producing all kinds of positivity, no matter the harshness of the world that might shower down on you relentlessly. Black and abundant is just the embodiment of perseverance, joy, and pure, just genuine happiness despite anything that tries to impede you in any way. And so just being proud to look in the mirror and know that your Black skin it carries a lineage of strength, and don't have the word for it. We're just going to end on strength and beauty.
There we go. Wow. I'm just no hate to the people who have been on the podcast in previous episodes, but that's been the best one that I heard so far. That was a great definition. So thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you
for being here. We absolutely loved having you here. This is a dope conversation, and I genuinely feel like our audience is going to love it. There's going to be so many people that listen to this and relate, and I really feel like you're going to impact so many men out there, even if it's just one man. Like, somebody's going to be impacted by you, and it's going to change their mindset, which is going to further change our community for the better. So
I hope so.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening to another episode of Black and Abundant. We will catch you on the flip.